So, gardens and the narrow door. Two different things, but they are connected. That last passage of scripture comes immediately after the very first, our call to worship, where Jesus is comparing heaven to the mustard seed growing into a tree. And I've always wondered about that. And I checked. And a mustard tree is about 20 feet tall, and it grows vigorously even in semi-arid places like home. And yet it comes from the tiniest of seeds. I don't know if you see mustard seeds, but they're tiny. You get 8, 10 on your fingernail, certainly somewhere. So I think a lot about gardens, or I think a lot about my allotment. It's about my garden. I haven't, but I do think about my garden. And they give me great pleasure. They give me great pleasure when I'm sitting quietly. Not quite as much pleasure when I'm watering the allotment with a bucket, because we're not allowed to use a hose. It's hard work, but it is worthwhile. A few weeks back, I told you about the robin. Now, our back garden has got a new lawn, which also has to be watered every day. And so all the old lawn had been taken off. The garden area had been dug over with the rotavator and the new soil put down. And Robin loved our garden then, because he's coming down on the soil and he's picking the little bugs out of it. And one day, I'm sat in the back garden with my iPad thing, tablet thing, with up to my nose about this height, and he came and perched on top. And yes, he did that twice. We didn't care. They're very bold birds. And I've never seen a wild bird, even a robin. I've seen robins quite close. They'll follow you around if you're working over the soil, a few feet. Never at a range of about 8 to 10 inches. Oh, a tiny bird, a marvel of God's creation. Tiny bird with tiny head and tiny eyes inside it, with a visual acuity that can find a small green bug on a green leaf. It's marvellous, isn't it? We ought to say it's miraculous. Butterfly wings that are made of tiny scales, and all the colour doesn't come from them being coloured differently. It comes from the fact that slightly different textures reflect the light in slightly different ways. Just watching things grow. Not so much fun when some other God's creatures get to them, like caterpillars and slugs. That's what we have to do ourselves. We have to accept nature red in tooth and claw, or munching on the leaves that you wanted to grow. But you can. It's not work. The work in the garden, the work on the allotment, it gives you a sense of fulfillment. It connects you with the soil, it connects you directly with God, and it puts perspective in things. It puts perspective in things. It teaches you a bit of patience. You know, seeds have to germinate, they have to grow, they have to be nursed along until they're big enough to look after themselves, and that takes time. But sometimes also God's work will surprise you, because it seems like you've turned your back for a moment and something shot up out of the ground. I don't know what one of our neighbours has planted in the allotment, but I don't recognise it. It looks like burdock. But it's gone from a plant about this tall to a plant that comes up to there normally in the space of a week. It's just shot up. I don't know, it must have been. Now, we need this connection to the Lord through nature. We mustn't leave it behind. If we haven't got allotments or big gardens, even just going out for a walk to the park, we can get that connection. Because the world is a busy and a confusing place, and it tends to take over. Now, it's had a jolly good go at taking over my life this past week, and this weekend, and Monday. I've been very much concerned with worldly things because we have 3 cars in our family and they all went wrong at once. So starting last weekend, Alice's car was in the garage, that had been planned. We had to wait for 3 or 4 weeks to get it to go in the garage, it was that busy. And it's major works and it wasn't, it went on Friday and it wasn't going to come back until Monday. So that was out of action. Sunday I drove to Belton in my car, it was in Belton. So I had to leave it there. And that was supposed to be fixed on Friday, but the mobile mechanic was unwell, and I've got another mobile mechanic coming up on Monday. And then I got back on the train, and we drove home in nearness of the car, and it's making a funny sound. And it turns out there's something wrong with that as well, so part of which I've got fixed, and part of which will be fixed on Monday. So it's been one thing out after another. And it's not important, really, is it, if you think about it? I can get on a train, I can get on a bus. I've got a senior rail card for the trains, and I've got my free bus pass. Why am I worrying about the flaming cars in the first place? Well, of course you do, don't you? Yeah. Until you get a chance to sit down and pause and take a breath and understand that God's word is eternal. It's always there. And we're part of it. Have a think, all through the Bible, there's parables, and all of it was involved nature, creation, many times gardens. So there's the Garden of Eden. And particular emphasis on the water that waters the Garden of Eden. It was a special place because there's plenty of water, which you don't get in what is now Israel, in the Holy Land. Water is rare. So it's a place of bounty, that's why the rivers are emphasised. When Jeremiah, on a rare occasion, he's being positive, he's got a good message and he's pleased to give it. But the people of Israel are going to come back to their land. But they are going to be forgiven. And he paints a picture, and it's a picture of a garden again. Agriculture more water. And Jesus is always talking in parables about nature and soil, vineyards and gardens, agriculture in general, keeping animals, because God always talks in language that we can understand. In the 3rd millennium BC, God did not gather a group of shepherds and goat herds together on a hillside and say, right, there'll be a test at the end. Right. Well, starting with thermodynamics, God always talks to us, even then he talks in terms that we will understand. We have the story of creation. And I don't have any problem with the story of creation, even though I'm a scientist. No, it's not meant to be taken literally in the words as it's presented. For a start, it's not in the same words. It's in English. And before that it was in Latin, and before that it was in Greek, and before that it was in Hebrew. God's words are always true because they are powerful. We think Jesus talking in parables. Because God the Father talks in parables as well. He always talks to people in language that they understand. The earth is about 4.5 billion years old. God doesn't have the same concept of time that we do. We can't imagine that then time, so God is nothing. It's part of his plan. About 2.5, 3 billion years ago, but then there was no moon, another body the size of Mars hit the earth and should have been flat open. Except that it hit it, yeah, at exactly the right angle. To shave it. And it shaved a great gout of matter off those bodies, which coalesced into a ring. Earth had a ring at one stage, and then that came together to make our moon. And without our moon, at the right place, at the right time, the Earth's rotation, it was whizzing round like a spinning top, would not have been slowed down until we get to our time modern Earth, where the moon is more or less in the same position now. It is gradually going away, slowly. And we get our 24-hour day, and we get our seasons. The reason why the Earth is not upright, it's tilted over, it gives us our seasons, is that same impact, 2.5 degrees to the ecliptic, and that gives us our seasons. If we didn't have seasons, there'd be no life on Earth. That's a miracle that this protoplanet hit the Earth at exactly the right time and the right angle, and the collision was exactly right to produce the moon and to produce the seasons and to slow down the Earth. That's a miracle. That tells me that God's handiwork is there. Because 999,000 times, there wouldn't be an Earth. Because the impact would come. There are more instances, but I'm not going to. We are the product of God's will. We are made in his image. Whatever talents we possess have been given us to use in his praise and for the betterment of all mankind. And we come to the second part, the narrow door. Just after Jesus had been comparing the kingdom to a mustard tree in a garden, and then it goes on to talk about the narrow door. And there are other references to a narrow way. We can let the world get on top of us. We can let the world become our all in all. Jesus said this lots of times. The apostle keep repeating it. You're too wrapped up in the world. They were saying it to people then that didn't have all the technologies that it is about now. You know, they didn't have cars. I suppose they worried about their cart or their ox or their ass instead. Tell you what, the asses don't need new automators. They got wrapped up in the world then. We get wrapped up in the world then. Too easy. You know, some people have been staying up late to watch the football. That's not one thing. If it gives you pleasure, all right. But of course, it's not the be all and end. Some people have been watching a lot of tennis. And again, it's not the be all and end. You've got to have perspective, and you've got to keep. To borrow a football analogy, you've got to keep your eye on the ball. Our purpose, why we are set in this world, is to follow the Christian path. It's a narrow path, separated miles. But we have to keep to that narrow path. At the end of it is the narrow door that Jesus described as his path. But there are always things on our side. The devil is trying to lead us astray, but God has always provided things on our side. He's provided us with families that can support us. Our own earthly family, our church family, can all support us. There are people there who will help us stay on that narrow way. He's provided the wealth of creation in front of us for all to see. Free. Free. Free as the air. Free as God's word. To keep us on that narrow way. To keep us focusing on the word. To focus instead of to refocus, perhaps I should say, on the narrow way to that narrow door. So that when we arrive, we are not denied entrance. Because we have kept the faith. Because we haven't let the word wrap itself